One flea beetle outbreak cost us 3 weeks and left 2 sad eggplants. I'm Grant. Fiona's here, and this is Rude Insect.
And when Grant says sad eggplants, he means the kind you hold in your hand and think, well, technically dinner.
They were glossy. They had character.
They had trauma. Flea beetles hit that first planting hard. Tiny shot holes everywhere, leaves stalled, plants just sat there, sulking through early summer.
And this is Zone 6B, so eggplant does not have unlimited time to recover. If it loses late May and half of June, you're already asking a warm season crop to sprint before cool nights come back.
Exactly. So the lesson was not companion planting magically saves eggplant. The lesson was, don't plant eggplant alone in bare, dry soil like you're ringing the dinner bell.
Grant's garden mistake. I once planted eggplant in a beautifully cleaned bed. No weeds, no mulch, no neighbors. Just 6 little transplants standing in open dirt like runway models.
Runway models for insects.
I even admired how tidy it looked. Then flea beetles arrived and turned the leaves into lace. I kept watering and whispering motivational speeches which, shockingly, did not count as pest management.
The whispers were heartfelt. The beetles were unmoved.
So what actually helped was layering. Not one hero plant, but a neighborhood. Bush beans nearby, basil tucked in once the soil warmed, marigolds and catnip on the edge, mulch after the bed had heat, and row cover early if beetles were already active.
And row cover matters. I'm keeping everyone honest here. Companion plants are not a force field. Flea beetles are small, jumpy, and rude. If you've had pressure before, cover young eggplants until flowering, then uncover so pollinators can work.
Beans were the surprise for me. They don't scream pest control.
They don't. Bush beans are quiet helpers. We've grown Provider, Contender, and Royal Burgundy near eggplant. Provider has been the steady one. Royal Burgundy is nice because the purple pods are easy to see when harvesting.
Did the beans repel flea beetles?
I wouldn't claim that. What they did was fill space, shade the soil, reduce that hot, dusty surface, and help the bed hold moisture. Eggplant hates stress, and flea beetles seem worse when plants are stressed.
So the beans make the bed less miserable.
That's the scientific term, yes.
How close are we talking? Because my instinct is always to plant one more thing.
And that instinct is why I carry pruners. Bush beans about 10 to 12 inches from the eggplant stem works well, with 10 to 18 inches as the useful range. Close enough to share the bed, not so close you snap bean stems every time you reach for an eggplant.
In our 30-inch beds, we like eggplant down the center, beans offset along one side, basil in the gaps, and flowers toward corners or edges.
Yes, but not pole beans in the same bed unless you really know your sun angle and spacing.
I liked the pole bean idea. Vertical productivity.
You liked it until July, when the beans climbed the trellis, shaded the eggplants, and harvest turned into arm wrestling. The eggplants leaned toward the light and set fewer fruit.
Fine. Bush beans. Less bossy.
Basil is another good neighbor, especially once the soil is warm. Tuck it between eggplants, but don't plant it so early that it shivers. Basil fills space, is easy to harvest, and doesn't usually bully the eggplant.
Marigolds and catnip go more on the border for us, not jammed into the crown of the plant.
Right, they bring diversity to the edge, and catnip especially can sprawl, so give it a place where it won't flop over your young eggplants. Marigolds are easier to manage, but they still need airflow.
And fennel?
Far away.
Like different bed far away?
Yes, fennel is not the friendly neighbor in this setup. Keep it separate. It can interfere with nearby crops, and eggplant has enough problems without inviting drama.
If someone is starting from seed, I'd honestly grow more eggplant seedlings than you think you need. Use an eggplant seed starter pack, start extras, and expect a few divas.
Some stall, some get chewed. A few become those ridiculous glossy overachievers that make the whole bed worth it. But don't bank on every seedling being heroic.
Near the end here, I want the practical verdict. Fiona's 30-second verdict. Are eggplant companion plants worth doing for flea beetles?
Maybe leaning yes if you treat them as part of a system. Bush beans, basil, marigolds, and catnip helped our eggplants hold better than bare soil planting, mainly by reducing stress, covering soil, and making the bed less inviting. But if flea beetles are active early, use row cover until flowering. Companion planting helps. It does not replace protection.
So the recipe is, don't isolate the eggplant, don't overshade it, don't let the soil bake, and don't pretend optimism is a pest barrier.
Especially Grant's optimism.
Fair. I've lost that trial. If this helped, hit subscribe. We drop 3 new episodes every week on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so you don't have to hunt for the next one.
Thank you for listening to this edition of RudeInsect.com, Conversations with Grant and Fiona.